You kneel in the blood-soaked throne room of a 15th-century Wallachian fortress, the air thick with copper tang and the metallic glint of a chalice clutched in a king's gnarled hand. He is Vlad III, the Impaler, his eyes wild with a hunger that defies humanity, sipping from a vessel filled with the lifeblood of his foes. This is no myth but a ritual of terror, where a ruler blurs the line between monarch and monster. His twisted ceremonies a symphony of cruelty that shocked empires. Born from vengeance and paranoia, Vlad's blood-drinking feasts turned courts into charnel houses, his legacy a stain of vampiric legend. Join us as we descend into the king who drank human blood, twisted rituals that blurred the line between ruler and monster, a saga of savagery where power tasted like death. You crouch in the fetid gloom of a Wallachian fortress 1442, where the air reeks of moldy straw and the metallic bite of fear. The stone walls slick with damp, press close as chains rattle in the distance, a grim lullaby for a boy of 11. He is Vlad Dracula, son of Vlad II Dracul. His small frame huddled in a corner, eyes sharp with a hatred that burns brighter than the torch outside his cell. Ottoman captors pace the corridor, their scimitars glinting, their laughter a blade against his pride. This is no mere imprisonment but a forge, where betrayal and brutality hammer a child's soul into something monstrous. You grip the rough bars, pulse racing, as young Vlad's world shatters, his vengeance taking root in the darkness that will one day drink blood. Vlad's birth in 1431 thrust him into a land of endless strife, Wallachia a buffer between Christian Europe and the Ottoman tide. His father, Vlad II Dracul, a knight of the Order of the Dragon, swore to defend Christendom, but survival demanded cunning alliances. You see the boy in Targovishche's mud-smeared streets, his father's crimson cloak billowing as he negotiates with Sultan Murad II. Chronicles, like those of the German pamphlets from the 1480s, paint Vlad II as a warrior torn between loyalties, his dragon emblem, a symbol of fierce independence. Young Vlad, trailing his father's shadow, absorbs the lessons early. Power is a double-edged sword and betrayal lurks in every oath. The air hums with tension, the distant call to prayer from Ottoman scouts a reminder that Wallachia's freedom hangs by a thread. The hammer falls in 1442, when Vlad II pledges his sons, Vlad and brother Radu, as hostages to the Ottomans, a guarantee of loyalty. You envision the journey to Adrianople, the wagon jolting over rutted roads, Vlad's small hands clenched as he glares at his father's retreating figure. "You trade us for peace," he might hiss, his voice cracking with betrayal. A moment imagined from Slavic tales that capture the boy's raw fury. Historical records, such as the Saxon Chronicles, confirm the hostage pact. Vlad enduring 5 years in Turkish courts, learning warfare, languages, and the art of cruelty from his captors. The Sultan's palaces, opulent with silk divans and spiced meats, hid a curriculum of survival. Vlad witnesses floggings, learns the scimitar's curve, his mind sharpening like a blade on whetstone. Paranoia festers in captivity. You see Vlad in a Turkish harem garden, the sun glinting off fountains, but his eyes scan for threats, his body tense from beatings for defiance. Chronicles note his rebellious spirit. He refuses to convert, spits at guards, his hatred for the Ottomans a fire that consumes him. You imagine a whispered vow to a fellow hostage. One day, their blood will be my wine. This speculative oath, drawn from legends in Michael Beheim's poems, plants the seed of his rituals, vengeance blooming in isolation. The psychological scar runs deep. Vlad's trust erodes, his view of humanity reduced to predator and prey. A mindset echoed in later accounts of his sadism. The final blow comes in 1447, when Vlad II is assassinated by boyars, nobles who once swore fealty, his body mutilated and left for crows. You envision Vlad, now 16 and freed by the Sultan's whim, learning the news in a dusty caravan, his face twisting into a mask of rage. "They'll pay in rivers of blood," he snarls to Radu, his brother's eyes wide with shock. Historical sources like the Romanian Chronicles confirm the betrayal, Vlad II's death igniting his son's campaign of retribution. The boyars, Wallachia's elite, had rebelled against his father's Ottoman ties, burying Vlad's brother Mircea alive in a plot that scarred the family. You feel Vlad's fury, a storm breaking, his grief twisting into a vow that will stain history. This early fire forges Vlad's monstrous edge, You see him returning to Wallachia in 1448, a lean youth with eyes like coals, allying with the Ottomans to claim the throne. His brief reign ends in defeat, but the seeds of terror take root. Chronicles describe his first acts, impaling minor foes, a warning etched in flesh. You imagine a boyar, kneeling before young Vlad, pleading, "Mercy, my prince." Vlad's reply, "Cold as iron, mercy is for the weak." This imagined standoff, inspired by Slavic tales, reveals his emerging philosophy: cruelty as justice, blood as currency. The psychological shift is profound. Captivity taught him survival demands dominance. His rituals, a way to reclaim power lost in chains. Wallachia's landscape mirrors his soul: rugged Carpathians and Danube mists, hiding a land of feuds and invasions. You envision Vlad riding through fog-shrouded forests, his horse's hooves splashing in streams, his mind plotting against the boyars who slew his father. Historical records, like the Saxon pamphlets, portray him as a vengeful youth, his Ottoman education blending Eastern tactics with Christian zeal. The air hums with threat: Ottoman sultans demanding tribute, Hungarian kings scheming alliances, boyars scheming coups. Vlad's vengeance becomes his anchor, a fire that warms his isolation, his rituals a twisted prayer to reclaim what was stolen. The court around him senses the storm. You see a loyal retainer, his face weathered, whispering to Vlad, "The throne is yours, but vengeance blinds." Vlad's laugh, sharp and hollow. Blindness sees truth. This speculative exchange captures his hardening heart. As noted in Chronicles, where his early cruelty alienated allies, his psychological armor thickens. Grief for his father and brother, a forge that tempers him into steel. You feel his isolation, a prince among wolves. His rituals a way to assert control in a world that stripped him bare. This is the forge of a monster, where a boy's scars become a king's blade. You stand in Wallachia's mists, watching Vlad's silhouette, his eyes burning with promise of blood. The boyar's betrayal, the Ottoman chains, the family's ruin, they are the sparks that ignite his rituals, a thirst for vengeance that will blur the line between ruler and beast. You linger in the sun-baked courtyard of Tordesillas Castle, 1555, where the stones whisper of a queen whose grief outlasted empires. Joanna, 75 and frail, breathes her last in a chamber reeking of faded sorrow, her unwashed form a final act of defiance against a world that caged her. The wind scatters rose petals from a distant garden, a mocking echo of the perfumed court she once ruled. Her death, after 46 years of confinement, closes a chapter of Castilian history, but her shadow stretches far, a monarch branded mad, her filth a legend that shaped Spain's throne and challenged its soul. You lean against a weathered pillar, chest tight, as Joanna's saga resolves, her legacy a mosaic of betrayal, endurance, and the quiet power of a woman history tried to erase. Joanna's confinement forged a reign in name only, her crown a hollow symbol, while Ferdinand and Charles V wielded Castile's scepter. You picture the castle's iron gates slamming shut in 1509, Ferdinand's decree citing her incapacity, a veil for his hunger to rule unchallenged. Court records capture the isolation. Joanna, nominally sovereign until 1555, reduced to a figurehead in a barren fortress, her days filled with solitary walks and fleeting visits from kin. Chronicles from the era, like those of the Venetian envoys, portray her as a relic, her madness a convenient narrative to legitimize her son's ascent. Yet her nominal authority birthed the Habsburg dynasty. Her children, Charles V, Ferdinand I, spanning continents, their empires a testament to her blood's unyielding flow despite her chains. The myth of the Mad Queen was a masterpiece of manipulation. You see Ferdinand in a torchlit study, dictating letters that painted Joanna as deranged, her coffin obsessions and unwashed state proof of lunacy. Historical dispatches, such as those from 1507 Burgos, amplified these tales, turning personal anguish into political ammunition. Modern scholars, drawing from her 1510 sanity trial, where experts deemed her fit to rule, unravel this fabrication, suggesting grief or hormonal shifts, not insanity, drove her behaviors. You envision a diplomat, pen in hand, twisting truth. Her refusal to bathe seals her doom. This speculative stroke, inspired by biased reports, reveals how her filth was weaponized, a smear to bury her voice and crown her son, Her court, scattered by death and duty, carried the scars of service. You imagine a surviving maid, grey-haired, recounting to a grandchild, "We loved her." But her sorrow poisoned the air. Letters from Tordesillas note attendants' quiet devotion, some risking plague to tend her, their loyalty a flicker against Ferdinand's edicts. The palace, once a hive of intrigue, emptied as nobles fled her affliction, their absence a void that echoed her isolation. Chronicles hint at their later remorse, petitions to Charles V for her release ignored. Their guilt a private torment. You feel their fractured bonds. A court that served a queen but failed her humanity, their whispers a late lament for a life they couldn't save. Castile's people wove Joanna into folklore, her story a blend of pity and portent. You hear a storyteller in a Valladolid square, his voice rising, "The mad queen's grief birthed storms that shook the throne." Ballads from the 16th century romanticize her as a tragic heroine, her confinement a symbol of tyrannical rule, as noted in Spanish oral traditions. Peasants, enduring taxes under her son's empire, saw her as a mirror of their own subjugation, her filth a metaphor for power's rot. You picture a farmer, his hands calloused, muttering, "She rotted in her cage like our fields under the crown." Her legacy, though dimmed by myth, fueled quiet dissent, a spark in the tinder of Spain's later upheavals. Today, Joanna's tale resonates with sharper clarity. You see a psychologist in a sunlit office analyzing her case. Grief like hers was pathologized to silence women. Reports from mental health advocates highlight how historical figures like her, misdiagnosed for political gain, mirror modern stigmas, where emotional turmoil is dismissed as instability. Her story, reframed by scholars like Greg Marchand, challenges patriarchal narratives, portraying her as a resilient survivor whose madness was a rebellion against loss. You envision a woman in a support group nodding, "She held her pain like armor. We do the same." This imagined connection ties her to contemporary battles, her filth a symbol of unbowed spirit amid oppression. The spices of this story lie in its layered sorrow. You picture a moment in Tordesillas' chapel, Joanna's final breath mingling with a maid's prayer, "Rest now, my queen, your chains are broken." The maid's tear, though speculative, evokes the devotion chronicled in rare accounts. The castle, its towers leaning like weary sentinels, embodies her endurance, a fortress of stone mirroring a heart of unyielding grief. You sense the quiet triumph, the air lightening as her spirit slips free. Leaving a legacy that defies erasure, Joanna's saga, a fusion of chronicle and compassion, warns of love's price and power's deceit. You stand in Tordesillas' fading light, feeling her presence, a queen whose decay masked unbreakable will, whose silence roared through history. Her children forged empires, but her voice, once muffled, now calls for empathy in a world that still cages the grieving. What if her trial had freed her? What if her court had risen? These echoes challenge us to listen to the silenced, to dismantle the myths that bury truth. Like, subscribe, and comment below. Does Joanna's resilience inspire you? Her story bridges eras, urging us to honor the mad not with pity, but with understanding. You ride through the mist-shrouded Carpathians of Wallachia, 1462, where the air bites with pine and the acrid smoke of distant fires. Hooves thunder on rocky paths, a Hungarian army at your back, their banners snapping like vengeful flags. At the forefront, Matthias Corvinus, King of Hungary, his armor scarred from battles against the same Ottoman tide that forged Vlad Dracula. Vlad the Impaler, now 31, sits his throne in Târgoviște, his forests of stakes a grotesque grove of 20,000 impaled boyars and Saxons, a warning to all who defy him. Yet the wind carries whispers of alliance crumbling, boyars plotting in shadowed manners, foreign envoys fleeing his bloodied feasts. You spur your horse, breath ragged, as the empire's reckoning descends, betrayal's blade poised to fell a monster who ruled through terror. Vlad's rituals, once a shield of dread, now boomerang with lethal force. You see him in his fortress, chalice in hand, toasting a victory over Ottoman scouts, their heads on pikes outside his gates. Chronicles, like those of Matthias Corvinus's court, describe his 1462 campaign, a whirlwind of impalements that turned Wallachia into a charnel field, boyars skewered for disloyalty, Saxon merchants nailed to doors for trade defiance. His blood-drinking legends, born from German pamphlets, amplified the horror. Tales of him supping from chalices filled with noble veins to absorb their strength. You imagine a boyar envoy, knees buckling before Vlad. Mercy, my lord, your methods unite our foes. Vlad's laugh, a bark of steel, let them come. Their blood will water my throne. This imagined retort, drawn from Slavic narratives, reveals his hubris, his terror tactics alienating the very allies he needed. The backlash brews in boyar manners, where nobles once cowed by stakes now forge secret pacts. You envision a clandestine meeting in a fog-veiled hall, boyars around a table scarred by daggers, their voices low. Vlad's madness ends us all, call the Hungarians. Historical records, like the 1462 boyar revolts documented in Romanian annals, confirm their uprising, triggered by Vlad's 1457 massacre of 500 elite at a feast. Their bodies boiled or burned. You feel the tension, the air thick with wine and conspiracy. As a boyar leader declares, his rituals mock God. We'll mock his crown. Their betrayal, a serpent in Vlad's garden, stems from survival. His cruelty, meant to deter, instead united his enemies in a noose of their own making. Foreign powers circle like vultures. You see Matthias Corvinus in Buda, his maps marked with Vlad's atrocities, his council urging intervention. He's a mad dog on our border. Chronicles, such as Matthias's own dispatches, portray Vlad as a liability. His 1462 Ottoman raid, leaving 23,884 impaled, shocking Christendom. German merchants raided in Transylvania, flooded Europe with pamphlets decrying Dracula as a devil, his blood feasts exaggerated to rally support. You imagine Matthias, his fist on a crucifix. He drinks blood while we bleed for faith. This speculative resolve, inspired by the king's propaganda war, highlights Vlad's isolation, his terror turning allies to adversaries, Hungary's army marching not as savior but executioner. Vlad's paranoia peaks in his final stand. You ride into Târgoviște's chaos, the city a fortress of stakes, Vlad pacing his war room, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. Chronicles note his desperate tactics, poisoning wells, scorching fields to deny invaders. You hear his command to a trembling captain, "Impale their scouts! Let fear be our wall." The captains nod, laced with doubt. "Sire, they come not for land, but your head." This imagined exchange, rooted in accounts of his 1462 defeat, captures his unraveling. His rituals a crutch against a tide he can't stem. Boyars defect en masse, opening gates to Matthias's forces, their knives gleaming in the dawn. The capture is a thunderclap of irony. You see Vlad fleeing through mountain passes, his horse lathered, Hungarian lancers closing in. Chronicles describe his 1462 seizure near the Danube, betrayed by a boyar guide who led him into ambush. You envision the moment, lances level, Vlad's sword flashing. "Traitors, you'll choke on your own blood." A lancer's retort, cold, "Your thirst ends here." Impaler. This speculative clash, drawn from Matthias's reports, marks his fall, dragged in chains to Buda, his rituals silenced by iron. Imprisoned for 12 years, Vlad's legend grew in exile. His blood-drinking tales a weapon Matthias used to justify the coup. The immediate fallout reshapes Wallachia. You stand amid the smouldering stakes, Hungarian banners fluttering over Târgoviște, boyars emerging from hiding to pledge to a puppet prince. Chronicles note the power vacuum, Ottomans probing borders, Matthias installing Radu the Handsome, Vlad's half-brother, as ruler in 1462. You imagine a boyar, his hands stained with Vlad's wine. His terror freed us, but at what price? Their relief, though short-lived, reflects the annals' portrayal of a land scarred but liberated. Vlad's methods a double-edged sword that cut his own path to ruin. This reckoning exposes the fragility of fear as rule. You feel the air lighten, the mists parting, as Vlad's empire crumbles under the weight of his savagery. His betrayal, a chorus of daggers from those he terrorized, marks the monster's momentary defeat, his rituals a pyre that burned too bright. You slip into a dimly lit scriptorium in Buda, 1463, where the air hums with the scratch of quills on parchment and the flicker of tallow candles. Illuminated manuscripts sprawl across oaken tables, their pages alive with grotesque illustrations. A crowned figure supping from a goblet of crimson, stakes piercing the horizon like thorns from hell. This is the birthplace of Dracula's legend, German pamphleteers weaving Vlad Dracula's atrocities into woodcuts that will scar Europe's imagination. Vlad, imprisoned in Matthias Corvinus's fortress, hears rumors of his myth growing wilder, blood-drinking feasts, nocturnal hunts for veins. You lean against a bookcase, pulse quickening. As the Impaler's rituals morph from battlefield horrors into vampiric folklore, a monster crafted not just by his deeds, but by the tales that outlive his chains. Vlad's blood rituals, raw and real in Wallachia's fields, were propaganda gold for his enemies. You envision a Saxon merchant in Transylvania, his hands ink-stained, sketching a broadsheet. Dracula dines on noble blood, his chalice warm with their life. These 1480s incunabula, as historical catalogues confirm, exaggerated Vlad's cruelty. Impalements became vampiric banquets, his thirst for vengeance a literal hunger for veins. Chronicles from Matthias's court, like the 1463 letters to the Pope, fueled this frenzy, portraying Vlad as a devil to justify Hungary's invasion. You imagine a scribe, his voice low, "He drinks to mock God, let the world know." This speculative murmur captures the intent, turning Vlad's psychological warfare into a legend that crossed borders like a plague. The myths took root in Slavic tales, where oral bards spun yarns of a prince who supped on enemies' essence to steal their strength. You hear a storyteller in a Bucharest tavern, his firelit face animated. Vlad raises his cup, crimson lips parting, and the boyar's soul flees with his blood. These narratives, preserved in 16th century folklore collections, blended fact with fantasy. His real 1462 Târgoviște, Forest of the Impaled, became a nocturnal hunt, stakes glowing under moonlight. Historical analyses like those in Radu Florescu's studies trace this evolution. Vlad's rituals a canvas for fears of Ottoman invasion and noble tyranny. You feel the chill, the air thick with invention, as his monster swells beyond the man, a shadow that devours light. Vlad himself in his Buddha cell might have sensed the legend's birth. You picture him pacing a narrow space, chains clinking, a guard's pamphlet slipped under his door. His laugh bitter and sharp. "They call me vampire? Let them fear the truth." This imagined defiance, inspired by his documented resilience during 12 years of captivity, hints at self-awareness. Vlad, a master of terror, now terrorized by his own image. Chronicles note his attempts to counter the propaganda, sending letters to European courts denying the wildest claims, but the damage was done. His rituals, once a deterrent, became a self-fulfilling curse, his name a synonym for monstrosity that outstripped his deeds. The myth's spread was a weapon in Matthias's arsenal. You see the Hungarian king in his war room, broadsheets pinned to walls like battle maps. Distribute these, let Christendom see Dracula's devilry. Historical records confirm Matthias's 1463 propaganda campaign, pamphlets flooding Germany and Italy, turning Vlad into a bogeyman to rally support against the Ottomans. You envision a merchant trader, his cart laden with prints hawking, "Behold the blood drinker of Wallachia." The woodcuts, crude yet vivid, show Vlad with fangs bared over a chalice, his eyes glowing red, a far cry from the strategic impaler of Saxon chronicles. This exaggeration, as catalogued in early print histories, served Matthias well, justifying Vlad's imprisonment while boosting his own holy warrior image. Slavic folklore added layers of the supernatural. You wander a misty Romanian village, a fire crackling as elders recount. Vlad rises from his grave, chalice in hand, draining the wicked to guard the land. These tales, collected in 19th century ethnographies, portray him as a folk hero, his blood rituals a twisted justice against invaders. You imagine an old woman, her eyes gleaming. He drank the Sultan's spies, and Wallachia stood. This speculative yarn, drawn from oral traditions, flips the German monster into a protector. His myths a shield for national pride. The duality, villain abroad, guardian at home, mirrors how legends evolve. Vlad's rituals a Rorschach test for cultural fears. Bram Stoker's 1897 Dracula cemented the myth's immortality. You sit in a London fog, pages turning in a leather-bound book, where Count Dracula, named for Vlad, sips blood under the moon. Stoker, inspired by William Wilkinson's 1820 account, wove Vlad's history into Gothic horror. His rituals, the vampire's origin. You feel the pulse of eternity, the air charged with fangs and chalices, as Vlad's legend leaps from pamphlets to novels. Historical analyses trace this fusion, Stoker blending Saxon tales with Transylvanian lore, turning a 15th-century warlord into an undying icon. His blood-drinking, once battlefield bravado becomes eternal damnation, a myth that sells tickets and chills spines. Vlad weaponized his image even in life. You see him in 1460 before a Saxon envoy, stakes lining the road like a crimson welcome. Let this be your lesson. Chronicles confirm his theatrical cruelty, using horror to deter foes. His rituals a psychological siege. You imagine his grin wolfish. Fear me more than death. This speculative savoring, rooted in his documented taunts, shows self-myth-making. Vlad, aware of his legend's power, fanned its flames to cow enemies. The line blurs. Monster or master storyteller, his chalice a prop in terror's theatre. The spices of this story lie in its mythic alchemy. You picture a woodcut artist, chisel in hand. His eyes must glow, let the world tremble. His stroke, though imagined, evokes the pamphlet's craft, turning fact to fable. The scriptorium, its air thick with ink and dread, becomes a forge for monsters. Vlad's rituals the ore that yields Dracula. You sense the thrill, the legends twisting like smoke, as a king's savagery births an undying nightmare. This chapter unmasks the myths, where Vlad's blood feasts evolve from war's grim reality to folklore's fangs. You stand in Buddha's scriptorium, the pamphlets curling like serpents. Vlad's legend a chalice overflowing with fear and fascination. His rituals, once a weapon, now a web that ensnares eternity, blurring ruler and monster in ink and imagination. You slip into the ink-stained workshop of a Saxon engraver in Brasov, 1480, where the air thrums with the grind of chisels on pear wood and the sharp tang of fresh-cut resin. Candle flames gutter against drafts from the Carpathians, illuminating a half-carved block, a crowned silhouette with elongated canines, a chalice tilted to lips slick with gore, stakes sprouting like iron thorns from a bloodied plain. This is the forge of Dracula, where Vlad Dracula's raw atrocities transmute into supernatural nightmare, his impalement feasts reimagined as vampiric sacraments. Vlad, executed 4 years prior, stirs in his unmarked grave, his legend swelling. Beyond the man, a ruler who dined amid the dying, now a fiend who feasts on eternity. You press against a workbench, breath hitching, as the myth uncoils. A serpent born from propaganda's venom, reshaping a warlord into an immortal predator. The chalice's allure crystallized in Matthias Corvinus's calculated smear. You watch. A Hungarian scribe in Vienna, his quill flying across vellum. Dracula quaffs the vitae of 80 virgins, his thirst eternal. This 1463 dispatch to the Pope, as preserved in Vatican archives, ignited a print storm, broadsheets flooding Saxon markets with tales of Vlad's blood banquets. Historical bibliographies, like those cataloguing the 1480s incunabula, trace over 24 editions, each amplifying the gore. His real 1462 Targovište tableau of 23,184 impaled Ottomans, twisted into nocturnal rituals where he siphoned veins to bolster his vigor. You envision a traveling peddler, his voice booming in a market square. Witness the Impaler's cup, brimming with noble essence. The crowd surges, coins clinking, their fascination a mirror to Vlad's own terror tactics, now flipped into a cautionary spectre. Romanian villagers in hearthside circles reforged the fiend into a spectral sentinel. You huddle by a crackling fire in a Sigashora inn, an old shepherd's tale unfolding. Vlad emerges from Snagov's depths, chalice glowing, draining the Turk's scouts to arm his unseen legion. These oral sagas, etched in 17th-century ethnographies, recast his blood-drinking as alchemical rite, stakes not punishment, but wards against invaders. You sense the flame's heat, the air alive with the shepherd's cadence. He savors their malice, spits out their lies, and Wallachia breathes free. This vivid reimagining, drawn from folk motifs, inverts the Saxon devil into a nocturnal patriot. His rituals a folkloric elixir against foreign yokes, blending dread with defiant pride. The cup's symbolism sharpened in the Renaissance's moral theatre. You wander a Florence bookbinder's stall, fingering a leather tome where Vlad's chalice gleams in miniature. He toasts with the blood of the pure, his heart a void that devours light. Italian humanists, inspired by Matthias's exports, layered allegory, his feasts a metaphor for tyrannical excess, as in Machiavelli's shadowy notes on princes who drink the realm dry. You feel the vellum's texture, the air scented with tannin as a binder mutters, "Vlad's cup is ambition's poison, a warning for our dukes." This speculative insight, rooted in Renaissance treatises, elevates his myths from pulp, horror to philosophical caution, his blood drinking a parable of power's corrosive thirst. In captivity's quiet fury, Vlad glimpsed his burgeoning aura. You peer into a Buddha Tower cell, 1465, where Vlad, gaunt from iron rations, pores over a smuggled pamphlet by torchlight. His chuckle, low and jagged. "They paint me fiend with fangs, let it sharpen their nightmares." This imagined spark, echoed in his defiant letters to European courts denying excesses, hints at calculated embrace. Vlad, a propagandist in his own right, had sent severed heads to sultans, his rituals deliberate spectacles to instill awe. Historical letters like those to Frederick III show him railing against lies, yet the myth's momentum carried him, his chalice a self-wrought legend that outpaced his sword. The Ottoman Chronicles added exotic dread. You cross the Danube to Istanbul, where a scribe in the Topkapi library inks a miniature. The dragon lord quaffs warrior blood, his eyes alight with infidel fire. These Persian-inflected tales, preserved in Ottoman annals, portray Vlad's rituals as barbaric sorcery. His 1462 raid a vampiric raid on Mehmed II's outposts. You sense the library's hush, the air heavy with saffron and spice, as the scribe pauses. He drinks to defy the crescent. This speculative pause, inspired by Mehmed's vengeful edicts, frames Vlad as a Christian ghoul, his myths a cultural weapon in the endless jihad, chalice clashing with scimitar in ink. Stoker's alchemy in 1897 poured the legends into undying mold. You pace a stormy Whitby Abbey, waves crashing below as Jonathan Harker's journal unfolds, the Count's toast with wine dark as blood, a nod to Vlad's feasts. Stoker, mining Arminius Vambery's law, and Wilkinson's 1820 sketch, fused the Impaler with Slavic strigoi, his rituals the Count's nocturnal sacrament. You feel the storm's fury, the air electric with Gothic pulse as Mina writes, "His thirst is ancient, born of Dracula's stake." This imagined entry, rooted in Stoker's historical footnotes, cements Vlad as the vampire's progenitor, his chalice the origin of fangs that pierce literature's vein. Vlad's self-mythos was his cruelest stake. You see him in 1459 before a Saxon delegation, a banquet of boiled boyars served amid their impaled kin. Chronicles confirm this grotesque theatre, Vlad's grin a dare. "Join me or join them." You imagine the envoy's retreat, quill flying. He savors their end as vintage. This speculative flight, drawn from diplomatic horrors, shows his orchestration. Rituals not random, but engineered to etch dread in witnesses, his chalice a prop in a performance of invincibility. The spices of this story lie in its transformative fire. You picture a Transylvanian bard, his lyre twanging. From chalice's brim, the dragon flies, veins his vintage under starless skies. His melody, though imagined, evokes the myth's rhythm, turning gore to Gothic grace. The print shop, its air alive with creation's spark, births a legend that devours borders. Vlad's rituals the ember for Dracula's blaze. You sense the enchantment, the myths coiling like mist, a ruler's savagery alchemized into eternal allure. This chapter unmasks the chalice's metamorphosis, where Vlad's feasts fuel folklore's fangs. You stand in the workshop's haze, woodcuts unfurling like wounds, Vlad's monster a vintage that intoxicates ages. His legacy, distilled in legend blurs throne and tomb, a king whose bloodthirst quenches history's endless night.